Okay, so hello Zakiyya, welcome to the Consciously Connected Conversations podcast. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I'm like super excited to be here as well. I haven't spoken on unschooling in a while, so it's like nice to have that opportunity to like reflect on my journey. So thanks for having me.
Yay, thank you. And I'm so glad you
Yeah.
agreed, not knowing anything about me or where I'm from. So that's the kind of person I am. All right, unschooling, I'll jump in. Let's go.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So to
Mm,
start with, maybe if you want to share a little bit about yourself, yeah, anything you want to share with us about your background, anything, whether it's related to unschooling or not, just to tell us a bit
mm.
about who you are.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, it might be useful to just locate myself like in the present now, being like Feb 2026 is all my kids are like sort of out of the schooling phase. So the youngest is 19, and then there's a 26 and 27-year-old. So we've kind of transitioned out of unschooling. I myself went back to school and did my master's in clinical psychology in Malaysia. So we even tried you know, a different country after COVID just to get out and like breathe different air for it because of the after the confinement. So that was interesting. And then I mean, I feel like, that unschooling lens brings you into even to like brought me so into my master's as well, how like reflecting on our practices and what I was experiencing. Um, and like now merging also, like I'm a late identified ADHD, like at 50 only. So, like, um, and the rest of my family's neurodivergence, like recognizing or identifying it also came much later. So, merging all that, our journey, the neurodivergence, um, formal studies, it's like brought me into like a really interesting space right now.
Sure. Wow. There's like
Mm.
so much I want to touch on. I'm like, ah. Okay. So maybe if we start then, if you could take us back to sort of your journey of like how you got into unschooling, why you chose not to send your kids to school, sort of what that looked like for you guys as a family.
Mm. Okay, so like there was definite certainty with my husband and I that we're not going to do school. But we weren't 100% sure if we're going to have kids, but we knew if we have them, they weren't going to go to school,
I love
um,
that.
like traditional school. So like we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, but what do we want for them? Because for us, our experience was that it was lacking, you know, even though we both did really well and got good grades, and that we just felt like it was a very narrow experience and almost like a shrinking experience. So we were trying to think, what do we give our kids that can be like expansive? But now that was like pre-Facebook and things. So I had to like really, I had to struggle to find community. It was Yahoo groups then. Uh, finding some international Yahoo groups, and then I found a secular homeschooling group in South Africa. Um, so it was book and blogs, like there were just a handful of blogs. You knew all the blogs out there. And then we found books on to read, John Holt, A.S. Neil's Summerhill. And then and we like by then my son was around 6 already, and then we realized that what we were doing, even though we didn't have a name for it, was unschooling already. So like then it started giving us language to like find other people, but it was all online. So that's how we got into it. It was fortunate, given that they all neurodivergent, that they had this nice experience rather than having to like shrink themselves into the schooling system. It was like, yeah. So I think that was the entry point.
Yeah. And then
Mm,
what did your for a lot of people, even now I'm still trying to explain unschooling to people. Sometimes
mm,
I just don't explain it because I can see people are like, Okay, that's not a real thing. I'm just like, never
Yeah,
mind. Obviously not for
yeah.
you. What
Mm,
did unschooling sort of look like for you? I know you've done many years of it, but like
mm.
in a nutshell, like what did it look like for you and your family?
What's, like I can empathize with someone saying, yeah, that's not a real thing, because really it looked like we were on holiday. Like when you're on holiday, you wake up and you think about what's interesting and do things that are interesting. You eat when you're hungry. You go and wake up when you had enough sleep. So that was daily life was like that. But then, of course, my kids would like they had like multiple hyperfixations because the boys were 18 months apart. So there was a point where they were hyperfixated on this Yu-Gi-Oh card game. And so everything in our life revolved around Yu-Gi-Oh, watching it on TV, buying cards. They couldn't even read. So my time was reading all these cards to them all the time. And their scoring system was in the thousands. So, like, before I knew it, they were calculating and keeping score. And, there was that. And then later on, there was a hyperfixation with tennis. And that looked very like structured, waking up and being on the courts at 8 with a coach, and then physical training later in the day, and then matches later in the afternoon. Um, but all sort of interest driven and supported by us. My daughter, on the other hand, it's hard to tell. Hey, she came 9 years later. So it feels like she brought herself up, honestly. Like the exposure of having these brothers around who were doing things, lots of gaming, lots and lots of gaming. Um, yeah, I think for her, mostly being someone who's in her head, she was spent a lot of time just making up her own stories. So before she could write, and I had to like scribble away as she dictated stories and try and keep up pace with her. And then when she learned how to write, then she'd be absorbed in doing a lot of that herself and reading, and being very much a homebody
Mm,
for her. Mm.
yeah. And then, like from that, do you find they've changed over time now as they've grown into adulthood, or do you see that because they did unschooling, they're almost still unschooling, if that makes sense? Like, does it just carry through?
It it carries through in a lot of what you do. So if I look at my middle son, who's currently doing his master's in clinical psychology as well
Oh, wow.
in Poland of all places. I mean, he started undergrad, and he had like no schooling experience, and then he studied for his GED and SATs. So that was all the extent of his studying. And I
That
was a
gives
bit
me
worried, like
goosebumps.
he hasn't,
Whew.
yeah, I mean, he hasn't written any essays, or, like I was a bit worried, but he kind of, what was useful wasn't that he hadn't known how to write essays. What was useful was that he knew how to own his learning, you
Mm.
know, look for help, ask for help if he needs to. He didn't really like me being in the same field. I tried to offer my services, but they were like, "We got this, don't worry." So that carried into how he manages his studies at the moment. Um, and I think similarly with my daughter, who's now doing an undergrad in creative writing and literature. Um, it's totally out of my area of expertise, or in like I'm interested, but I can't really offer much. She manages her time herself. And then she's asked for assistance. Being ADHD, she said she needs to see an OT to help her manage her time and manage herself. And I was like, that's what I do professionally, but okay, we'll go and see an OT,
Yeah,
you
you
know?
don't know anything, you mom.
Yeah. So we did that, which, so basically it's like, okay, I'm falling yeah, I'm falling here. So yeah, I need support. What are the kinds of support I can get? So that's kind of how we navigate, or how they navigate themselves, like
Yeah.
getting the help when they need it and then just getting on with things.
Which feels so much like unschooling. Like I think of my own two who are much younger, and it just brings me hope that sure, they're not doing like exams and that now, but when the time comes, if that's what they want to do, they'll know enough to, like you say, they own their own learning. That's amazing. Sure. Did you
Yeah,
expect
they
that?
too.
Like when you're
I
unschooled?
So you know it in theory,
Yeah.
right? But you have to experience it to like say, oh my God, okay, it works.
Yeah.
Like, or it worked for us. So because they're much older, there's like a whole group of kids that are much older in their 20s now, and they all, it's not like everyone went into academia. There's some people who um, kind of hustling their way, doing like different causes and different like more arty, crafty things. There's some people who went into academia. Okay, I mean, a lot of them. I think like when you get older, you feel like your options are more limited if you want to function in this world,
Yeah.
that you have to do certain things. Um, so you have to, it was like it's something I had to witness to see, uh, okay, actually the follow through is there, from the unschooling into like actually directing yourself when you have a goal.
And if you were to say sort of like their school years, what would have been like their typical grades and whatever, did you find
Mm.
that they, what's the word? Like, did they almost naturally gravitate to what they would have learned in school, or do you find it was actually just gravitating just to interests, and then they built up the skills for exams and that later on?
Mm.
Had they not had exposure to exams at all?
They no, we
Yeah,
not at all.
yeah.
Or the school curriculum. I didn't even know what was in there.
Oh, okay.
Um, we so the obviously reading is a big deal, right?
Mm.
And so with my eldest, I was stressed about it. And then, but he learned how to read. Like I try to do things, but we do it for a day or two, and then, the consistency wasn't there. But eventually he just picked it up himself. And then I was like, I could breathe. I'm like, okay, fine. Then I know the others will. And then the other two also picked up reading on their own, and
Yeah.
not early. I mean, I think it was like 7, and then the other one was 8, and the other one was 9,
Okay.
when they started. But like by the time my daughter came along, I was like, I'm not stressed about this at all. So yeah. Um, so the reading was there, and then yeah, I think that was it. But now, I mean, obviously you're involved in like the real world. We watched a lot of documentaries on different things. I used to organize the March Against Monsanto protest. So they would be, I mean, they came along the one year, you know, I mean, but they also got to witness me like putting it together and like doing press interviews and things. So, so they got to witness like what's happening out there in the world, and they got to, their attention was like very focused on like why, like, you know, why are there wars, and why is there poverty, and why are things like this, like, standing at the passport at immigration at, where was that, I think Mozambique, we're just like hopping over 10 minutes, I mean 10 Ks over. And then there was this long process, and my son was like, but what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, how do you explain to it sounds ridiculous when you explain to a young child how we as adults have organized our systems of movement and control. And he was like, oh, this, okay, like this is it, you could see it's stupid, but like
Yeah.
now he struggles with visa issues being in Poland. So
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. That's
Yeah.
so funny. It's like that thing of all
Mm,
sort of like just playing this game that we all know we're part of, but we don't really want to be a part of it, but we have to be a part of it. I think that's
mm,
kind of where the unschooling feels like breaking away from it, which actually leads to my next question I wanted to ask.
mm.
Seeing that you studied tertiary and you went on to do your master's, and now your son is doing that, how do you feel the future? Because my previous guest I spoke to last week was saying there's such a need now for reform in tertiary education. Do you feel like there is change, or do you feel like there's so much that still needs to be done?
Oh, I think there's a lot that needs to be changed. I mean, I think it needs to go backwards because before tertiary education was about, like expanding your mind and humanities was something that was important. Understanding how the world worked was, important, and the issues and like sociology, etc. Now, I think it's so geared towards this is a financial investment for financial return, you know, and then the whole scam of it. Like in our day, it was, if you get your matric, then at least you're employable, right? Because my parents don't even have high school. They both I think my dad got primary school, but he didn't manage to do high school because group areas, he had to go very far and live somewhere else, and it wasn't doable. And my mom, I think she just dropped out in like what would be uh grade 4 maybe, you know. Yeah, right. So our generation was you get your matric. If you got your matric, then you're okay, you're employable. Then later on, they were like, you just get your degree. If you get your degree, then you're employable. Okay, now there's a gazillion graduates that are not employable. So, like, get your master's. Once you get your master's, then you're employable. In fact, at my uni at UCSI in Kuala Lumpur, there was like, I had to walk past this board every day, this huge board, and they gave the stats of how many people are graduates internationally, globally. And so, if you really want to differentiate yourself and be employable, then you do your master's. And I'm like, okay, and then
Yeah,
PhD,
then.
then postdoc, and then,
Yeah, when does it end?
yeah, it's like a
Well,
pyramid scheme.
yeah. And I wonder
Yeah.
then what do you think is the future of I wouldn't even want to call it tertiary because why does it need to be a next
Mm,
thing? The future of
mm,
the world, of work, of I don't
mm.
know, careers. Yeah.
I mean, there's an interesting movement. I don't know where they're going to, like, it's hard to tell because things are just changing so much faster, right? But there's an interesting movement called the Ecoversities Alliance, which is post-school learning, I wouldn't say institutions, but learning spaces, right? And there's an international alliance that gathers regularly, I think once a year, internationally and regionally. So I attended the African Ecoversities Alliance gathering in Uganda. And so basically, it's like learning has become very decentralized, and it's like and localized. So there'd be groupings. So there was like somebody from Egypt, and they run like a intense humanities thing for a year with readings and discussions. There's no exam, there's no accreditation, nothing. But you come out of that process like deep with a deep connection to what's the forces in how the world and how they operate. And it's an amazing experience for like 19, 20 years old, when you're full of that youth and vibrance and you want to change the world. Then there's like other learning spaces that are more like agroecological, or around food and growing food and connecting it to like what's out there. And so there's a lot of that happening. Can it translate into something financially viable to earn a living, though? I'm not so sure. I mean, I wasn't like really, you guys should get an education or degrees or whatever. This is all their own choosing. And it was because they looked around and said, that's my only option. Like if I'm not a creative, I can't, if you're not a creative where you can like sew or do art or do, those kind of things, then that's my only option. So I think we can't get away from it yet as much as we'd like to. We can't.
Yeah, it's sort of
I don't know.
reimagining the world. And I don't know if
Mm,
everybody's ready for that. But I suppose these small movements that we're making are hopefully building up to something. I guess we don't know what it is, so it's hard to say what it will be. I always think of like a
yeah.
barter system or something that just gets rid of capitalism, but I don't know what that looks like.
We
Yeah,
don't because we
yeah,
can't even imagine it. We're so
no,
immersed in what we have.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, like, you just do your role as pollinating these ideas, and then the next generation, we don't know what's going to grow out of that. But to trust that it will grow, something will grow different, something different will grow out of that.
Mm. I suppose it's similar to the trust of unschooling. We go, this is different to what everybody's doing. We're trusting it
Mm,
and we're just moving forward, which actually
mm,
leads to I've gone off now on a different tangent, but coming
yeah.
back, I wanted to ask you something I read on the website that you showed me, the Growing Minds website. Is that your personal
Hmm.
website?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
post that link in the description when I post this.
Okay.
I noticed you spoke a lot about oppression of kids in schools and like that child-adult dynamic. And as a
Mm,
previous teacher myself, I was in that. I was part of
mm,
that. And it's something that was a big reason why I wanted my kids out of the school system. I want them to stand on
mm.
their own 2 feet and say, like, I'm worthy as a human being, whatever age I am, sort of. I'm curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I think for me, that's more important than really talking about like the education side of unschooling. Because, like there's two components. It's the parent-child relationship, which then is adult-child relationship, and then like what kind of knowledge system, you know, you um you have. So for me, the bigger part was the parent-child relationship, which is in schools, and so teacher-child relationship also. So schools and conventional parenting is like very hierarchical, and it's parent power over children, teacher power over children. So we look at schools, right? Um, First of all, children don't consent to be there. And then once they enter the system, you don't need their consent for anything. Like you tell them, this is what your day looks like. You they need permission for bodily functions, even or when they can speak or what they're allowed to think about. It's everything is imposed on them for 12 years. Right. So first of all, nobody likes that experience, or most of us don't. Right. The second problem with that is that gets normalized. So even though you don't like it, you don't have get to experience what it's like to actually own your thoughts, own your bodily functions, own your time in a safe, supportive space, which is what the unschooling would be. That even though it's not a coercive space and it's co-created together. It's not like like children are just left to run across the road because that's what freedom is. It's safety, partnership, that kind of thing, right? So then it's normalized for them, which means that going into the world, they know what it's like to be treated like that. That's the one scary part. And the other scary part is they also know if they're in power, then you can treat those below you like that. And so the cycle continues,
Yes, yeah.
right? So it's oppressive, and regardless of I mean, the repercussions of it are problematic. But even if they weren't problematic repercussions, I don't, I don't think it doesn't fit with me that human beings have to go through this ritual of having so much of them controlled. Like it's not fair. It's not a nice. It's oppressive. it's a form of violence, and it's like something that our society could do without if we want to move towards something that's more kind and compassionate and egalitarian. It starts with how we treat the weakest members of our society, which are children, which are the most marginalized. They have so little say with in the matters of the world. And yeah, so that's kind of like how I see it. And I wouldn't say loved it completely. I tried really hard, but there was no playbook.
Yeah.
like like in theory it sounds good. How does this happen in practice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
And it's like
exactly.
super messy. It
Yeah.
was just super messy. Um
And I'm also curious
and
to hear, sorry, was there something else you were
mm,
going to say?
no, no,
I'm
no.
curious to hear with you speaking about the neurodiversity side of it. For me,
Mm,
now that I've come out of the school system, I sort of felt like I had to unschool myself before I,
mm,
started
mm,
the journey with my kids. I found the word masking didn't mean much to me until a few years ago. I came across it on social media somewhere and I thought, that's me. Like I hadn't put the word to it yet, but
mm,
masking was just my life because I grew up in the system where the teacher tells you what to do, push down the feeling, do the thing, be the person,
mm,
be the best. I was the kid who was always doing what I was told, and I always thought that was great until I realized it wasn't. And I just wonder if that's
mm.
played out differently then compared to like your experience maybe at school and then having your kids at home, if you've seen a difference there or if it still comes up because of general societal norms or
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, right? So we weren't aware that they're neurodivergent or that we were neurodivergent, but the philosophy was everyone gets to be themselves. So if we went out and we got home, my son would immediately go to his room. That was his decompression time. So we didn't call it decompression time. It was just like, oh, he does that.
yeah.
Or when we got back, he needed to draw in color when he was a kid. So even if we got home at 11 o'clock at night, there's no like just putting you into bed. And we didn't have bedtimes. So he would need to take out his pencil colors and paper and he'd draw a little. And, for like 40 minutes he needed, or maybe half an hour before he was ready to go to bed. So this is like, oh, this is something you need. So we just do it.
Yeah.
My daughter was like, um, I don't know, I don't know why, but we got her headphones from a very young age. Kind of we noticed that she's happy if she has headphones
Mhm.
and she has music. So that was something that was just always there. Um, so there was very little masking. Interestingly, the friend group, because it turns out that unschooling is very attractive to neurodivergent folks. So we had we started an unschoolers camp 16 years ago, I think. Like we just did one camp because we wanted to meet other in person, right? There were like two other families that were unschooling. So like, oh, that would be cool to just meet in person. And then I told everyone else that I knew, and we ended up as 7 families. It was a blast. And it's been going for 16 years now,
Wow.
right? Yeah, even COVID didn't hold us back. to, um, and it turns out a lot of the friends from that group neurodivergent. But I mean, we didn't have language for it. So when we were doing the DSM would be like social issues. And I was like, guys, but you guys have such a nice friend group. I've never really noticed that you have problems with friends. And they looked at me and they were like, Mom, they all neurodivergent. So we get each other. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So kind of what we had in our home and then their social group lent itself to them being themselves.
Mm.
So they don't really mask as much as um, they don't mask as much, but they're also particular about their social spaces or what they're going to do. Like they very easily say, no, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. That doesn't sound cool. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So whereas we didn't where we didn't even have the choice to say, no, I'm not doing that. You just had to go to family gatherings, weddings, school, sports day, whatever. So, so many masks, like so many layers of masks that I'm still kind of unmasking.
Yeah.
My husband feels like he doesn't even know if he could function without a mask. That's how long he's been masking for and how deeply he's been masking. So he's like, I don't know. I don't know who I'll be if I don't have a mask. So that's a very different space to be in compared to them who
Yeah.
probably will mask when they need to, but they
Yeah.
know they're wearing the mask. We didn't know we're wearing it, you
Mm.
know?
The awareness is different,
Mm,
exactly. Yeah.
mm,
And I feel like now there are the words and there's yeah,
mm.
it's becoming more, yeah, spoken
The
about in
language, yeah.
circles and online.
Yeah.
Okay, then something else I wanted to ask, where was it now? Oh, yes. I wanted to ask a little bit about the Learning Reimagined conference because I went on and I found it and I was just like, I want to attend all these things. And I think it was like 2018 or something. And I saw
Yeah.
Avatar, The Last Airbender. I don't know if you remember somebody did something on
Mm,
that. And I was
mm,
like, my
mm,
girls and I and my husband, we just sat and watched that whole series. And I was like, this is
mm,
unschooling. So when I saw that,
mm,
I was like, yay. But yeah, so
mm,
the Learning Reimagined conference, yeah, I would love to hear more.
mm. So the Learning Reimagined conference, we had two big ones. Um, it was, we've seen some of them happening in the US. Actually, there'd be a lot of unschooling conferences happening in the US. And Claire had like emailed me or messaged, like reached out to say, hey, don't you want to organize something in South Africa? And it took us 2 years to think about what that structure would look like for us here.
Yeah.
So we had one which was like had a proper program with like speakers, and then we had a beautiful play area. I wonder if you can go look at the photos on Facebook. I'll send you a link. A beautiful play area. So that was like the first gathering where all of us nationally got together. And this was like somebody said, it feels like coming home, having these conversations. The second one, we focused it on unschooling as decolonization because by then my own thinking had changed quite a bit to realize that there's so much depth to this path of unschooling and what it can do. And, but we also kept it open, as in we invited whoever's registering if they wanted to offer something. So then there were multiple streams. So we had a few international speakers as well. Akila Richards, three, Bayo Akamalafe and Teresa. I don't know if you're familiar with Parenting for Social Change, the book.
No?
Okay, so we had three of them, and local speakers, and we had a whole range of offerings. And so Avatar: The Last Airbender, obviously, we must have watched it like 20 times in our house. And the Friends um, was one of the offerings to pick out certain points to show how when children have agency and young people have agency, and when they have meaningful participation, because that's the other thing missing, right? Is participating meaningfully in what's happening, how they fly, literally the
Yeah.
avatar, but yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Mm,
Sure.
mm.
And then, so was the first one in person and the second one was online?
No, no, no. Both were
Oh,
in person in
oh,
Joburg.
okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the
We
international
had,
speakers came out here to speak.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Um, the first one, and it was, we sold tickets for it. So I managed to cover all the costs. We managed to cover all the costs. The second one, I only paid for one flight, if I'm not mistaken. I only paid for one flight. Akila was already in the country. And Teresa, because of the title and what the area of focus was, she submitted it to her university and they paid for her to come.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so that one, thankfully,
Yeah.
um, that was like less pressure on me to because you do the cost, you book the venue, you do
Mm.
everything up front, and then you hope
Hope.
and pray that you're going to sell. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, both of them were very well attended and very well received, I would say. The second one, I think, had a large impact because when I went to Uganda for the Ecoversities thing, I a few people who I didn't know were aware of this conference. They didn't know me, and they were like, "Oh, did you organize it? We just saw that." We're like, "Wow, this is happening!" You know. So even from the website stats, it got like a lot of views. So
Wow, that's amazing.
it
I wish I could go
spoke
back
to
in
a
time
need.
and watch it again
I
or be
know.
there. So I guess then I
Mm,
could ask, are you still in the sort of what do you call it? I guess like the community of unschooling, or now have you sort of moved away from it? Are you always a part of it? How do you feel?
mm. Okay, so now I started to face so like a lot of because it was a very lonely space to be in. I like tried to build community, right? So that was what camp was about. Then I um, I started the Unschooling in South Africa Facebook group, literally to find other unschoolers. And I was like, if we hit 50 members, we've done really well. But anyway, I think it's like sitting at like 6,000 people now. But I don't think, I think a minority of those are actually unschoolers. A lot of homeschoolers are just there out of curiosity. And so I kind of still, for the last 2 and 3 years, I actually was hands off because I was totally overwhelmed with my own studies. But now I sort of pop in there to share links or to suggest something or answer questions and to remove all the ads and the spam. So I still kind of am involved with that. I'll be on the Unschooling Summit, which is going to be held in March. So last year I was one of the speakers. We pre-recorded. I don't remember what happened after that because I was very busy.
Mhm.
But this year I kind of will join in and watch I'll still watch some of the talks, and then I'll be on the neurodivergent families roundtable conversation.
Okay.
So so I'm not like fully immersed in it, but like I think this will be something that will always be part of my activism or my contribution to like that kind of society or that kind of world that I'd like to see exist.
Yeah, thank
Mm.
you. And I'm so glad that I joined that group because that's where I came across you. And then I was able
Oh,
to look up
okay.
more things.
Yeah.
Because as you
You're
say,
right.
it's a lonely space to be in. A lot of us are
Mm.
just trying to figure out, yeah, like what we're doing. And then I think a lot of homeschooling people are just following curriculum because that's what they know, that's what they've always done. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that there's still a lot going on, especially for me. Yeah, I think just to end off with then, I'd like to ask maybe some words of wisdom, something you'd like to leave people with that are unschooling and maybe are having days where they're unsure of themselves now that you've seen it all the way
Mm.
through, like maybe something you could tell.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, look, there's no getting away that there'll be moments of panic, many moments of panic where, or you might question yourself and that. And that's okay. It's part of the process because that gives you an opportunity to see what's missing, kind of, where your work lies. But I would say that by and large, to be driven rather by your hopes for what you want for your children and for the kind of world you hope for them to live in and you want to contribute to, rather than being held back by the fear of the conformity that's like a very strong pull. So that would be like um, uh, my closing message was like go with the hope rather than the fear because it actually really does work out in a very nice way. It does.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I must say, just hearing your shares and telling us how it's gone for your kids and how they are
Mm.
now, I think it brought me so much hope to hear because I'm just trusting. I'm like, fueled with trust, and that's it every day. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You and kind of there's no it's only like even I mean I knew that other kids had done well, right? But I was like, but
Mm,
my kids, they're not into Shakespeare and they're not Like I see all these examples. So you kind of do slightly hold your breath and wait to see, like what, how they like express themselves,
Yeah,
having gone through the process. And that's okay, as long as you have fun along the way and, you're learning and growing. I
yeah,
mean, that's just like the people who spend time listening to podcasts, reading the articles, reading the books, have a much better time than the people who don't, because they're not expanding on what they know. And so they kind of get held back a lot more by the fears. So the hope also comes from expanding your own knowledge base,
yeah,
like deschooling your own mind.
yeah.
That, yeah.
And I suppose becoming the unschooler of unschooling. That's how I try to think of it. Like I'm actually doing it whilst, yeah, learning
Yes.
about it, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Doing it
Oh,
is,
sorry.
yeah, doing it is better than finding the perfect route to it.
Mm. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, for sure. That's the
Yeah.
only way to learn it is to do it. That's all we can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but thank you so much for being here and for giving of your time. I appreciate it so much.
You're welcome. Best of luck with the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. And it was lovely to meet you
Okay.
finally.
Yeah.